Welcome back, or welcome to my channel. It's Johanna, me and my dog of books, and I'm here to tell you about my March wrap up. I read, I can't remember how many books, and I'm going to go through them. These are the only ones I've gotten in real life, and the others I either got from the library and had to return them, or I had an audio or ebook. So I'm going to refer to my trusty laptop where I have my Goodreads and my reviews to keep me right. I honestly shouldn't sit at the window when I'm recording these because I genuinely get distracted. Squirrel! Squirrel! If you hear pitter patters, it's the doggos. I'll maybe make sure they say hello before I sign off. First up, The Lagos Wife by Vanessa Walters. Mystery thriller, I would say. This was an arc that I got. It came out in February though, so it's out just now, and it's set in Lagos in Nigeria, and it's a great page turner. I loved the setting. I loved the fact so Nicole is the main character. Well, her and her aunt. So Nicole moves to Nigeria with her Nigerian husband. She's not from Nigeria. She gets a bit of a culture shock in respect to male dominance in Nigeria and her place within the home. Anyway, she disappears. So her aunt goes to Lagos to try and unpick what's happened, and it's a story about that where you find out quite a lot about Lagos and the culture and the concept of Niger wives, which are a group of women who are married to Nigerian men but they're not natively from Nigeria, so more of like a support group, which is an actual thing apparently. Wonderful, really well written. The setting was, I just love reading about different worlds and cultures. So that was phenomenal. Plus it had this intrigue all the way through, and the ending, really good, really good. If you hear some huffing and puffing, it's Lucy. She's trying to get into her dad's office, who's currently working right now, despite it being a holiday Monday when I'm recording this. He's been having his lunch and she doesn't like when she gets knocked out of his office. She's having his lunch. The next one, so I'm going to count how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I read 14 books in March. It's not too bad. It's pretty decent. The next one, I actually read, didn't do too great for middle grade March. I sign up for all these read-alongs and I always like fail. But I did read 2 books for middle grade March, and the first one was called Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga, which was a lovely story about a young girl's journey from Syria with her mum, her dad and her brother, I think, to America, and it was about their about their cultural journey, about trying to feel belonging in America, from, I mean, it's middle grade, so from a young girl's point of view. So that was lovely to read. It was about her feeling suddenly in a world where she didn't normally think about her hijab or her religion or being from the Middle East, Syria, was never anything that she had to think about when she lived in Syria. And then obviously when she came to America, it was a very prevalent part of her identity. It's how she adjusts to that. So wonderful, so wonderfully written. 5 stars, absolutely adored it. I actually listened to it on Everand, which used to be Scribd, on audio, and it's a beautiful audiobook, highly recommend it. And then the second one was also an audio, and it was called King and Dragonflies by Cassine Callender, who also wrote Felix Ever After, which was beautiful. It was a 5-star read for me as well. This one was a 5-star read. It was a story of grief, loss, identity, race. Oh, it was just, honestly, sometimes I'm just like, see with middle grade, it was like, how are you able to jam pack such poignant commentary of society and identity into these books for such young people and do it so amazingly well? Wonderful, highly recommend, highly recommend. Then in a shift from middle grade, I then read What Kind of Mother by Clay McLeod Chapman. This is very much of a Shirley Jackson-esque gothic horror. Oh, people are doing outdoorsy garden stuff, so it's a bit noisy. Oh, don't they know I'm recording a video? Anyway, this was eerie. It's not for everyone. If you are a mum-to-be or a new mum, definitely don't read this because it really deals with physical and metaphorical child loss. It is creepy. Actually, my mind was all over the place when I finished reading this in a good sort of WTF kind of way. Teen mum Maddie returns to small town. She's kind of scraping by as a Pam reader, but she meets a kind of old school friend and she reads his Pam, which sends her and both of them down a dark path to uncover an actual hidden nightmare. Like, terrifying. 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. What did I read next? Let me check my trusty laptop because I have the memory of a goldfish. Oh man, that drill noise. Living in suburbia in it. So the other one was sort of queer horror. It's called Dead Animals by Phoebe Stuckes. The synopsis is basically the main character wakes up after a blackout after a party and she slowly starts to piece together a pretty violent assault. And a very vengeful stranger offers solace. But the price of justice might be deadlier than the crime itself. This is a weird, wonderful, yet mesmerising story of essay assault. So trigger warnings, this is not a book for everyone. And it follows the aftermath of the incident, which leads into what I said, the solace of a stranger who ends up becoming a really toxic queer relationship. And that's where the weirdness ensues. It's really hard to describe, but if you're up for weird, queer, horror, and don't mind essay triggers, check this out. It was a mind bender. It's only 144 pages, so brilliant. I do apologise for the incessant drilling sounds in my neighbourhood. Next was Calla by Colin Walsh, which I'd read for my Patreon book club. Laura and the Books book club. So it was an Irish story set in Ireland by an Irish author because it was Irish Readathon month and I'd heard lots of great stuff about this book, so I was very excited to read it. Well, I didn't really enjoy it that much. I think I gave it that. Sounded like the noise of it didn't. It's actually beautifully written. This is a synopsis of Calla. So 20 years later, kind of friends reunite in this old town after the discovery of a body that brings back the chilling disappearance of a teenager 20 years earlier. Haunted by the past, they must confront the roles that they played and stop the horrifying pattern from repeating themselves. So I went in thinking it was kind of like I would call it like a literary crime thriller, really. The writing was beautiful. The pace was chronically slow. And although the writing was beautiful, I didn't enjoy the kind of overall storytelling. So I could tell that it was beautifully written, it just wasn't for me. The crime and mystery plot lost me like halfway through. I'm not going to lie. After that, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I really struggled to keep up with it. I didn't like most of the characters. And that's fine because I can read books where the character's really dislikable. But there has to be something else that engages me. And also, like, content warning, which I had no idea about. There is a really brutal animal cruelty scene with a dog. I don't like that. walking from that, from dark. Actually, I did okay, middle grade March, because here was my third, Front Desk by Kelly Yang. How cute is this cover? This was adorable. This was a immigration story, and is about a Chinese family who, part of that family is a young girl called Mia. They make a journey from China to America for the American dream, which doesn't really exist. And reality hits home, and they realise that, like, to even survive, they end up taking the running of a motel by this, like, totally crooked other Chinese guy who is trying to do one over on them, to be honest. But despite that, Mia tries to help her family by working at the motel whilst also being at school. So there's some long-term guests at the motel, some of which are really nice, and it's basically another story of belonging, identity, racism, cultural identity, but it's filtered with kind of kindness and beautiful things about Mia and her family. It was so lovely, and this is part of a series. I think there's 3 keys, Front Desk part number 2. And look, for older readers, this author has already also written a book called Parachutes, which I don't know anything about, but this was lovely. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, so it was really, really sweet. Oh, it was really... Another one I finished, which comes out on the 25th of April, and was gifted to me by Verve Books, who are a great indie publisher, and it's The Damages by Genieve Scott. This was really, really good. It's set in 2 timelines, like 20 years apart. 1997, 1998, when the main character Rose is at university, I think, college, university, and then in 2020 when she's grown up, she's married, and the 2 stories are connected. Basically, she has a roommate at university who she kind of gets on with a wee bit, but something happens one night. She's disappeared. People are wondering about her disappearance. Rose was very much selfish and just looking to spend time with a guy she was hanging out with, so didn't really pay attention to her roommate's disappearance. And then there was, people were starting to point fingers. Anyway, she reappears, and then we go to 2020, where Rose is married to a children's author or a YA author, and allegations come up about that author of SA, and it's that journey. Now, these 2 timelines are connected, and you start to discover Rosie, because she's the main narrator, and it's her journey of trying to understand or believe or understand the differences between consent in the 90s and the 2020s, off the back of the Me You movement, and it's fascinating. I believe Genieve Scott is a Canadian writer. This was utterly compelling. There were times where you absolutely maybe detested the main character, but when she was in university, you can see some of the behaviours that are not hugely uncommon. And then when she's a parent and married and allegations come out against her husband, you start to see where our allegiances shift between to and from. That'll be Lucy wanting back in the back door, so 2 seconds. It was a very compelling literary thriller, and the ending I was processing for quite a few days afterwards. It feels quite realistic, but yeah, it took a while for my head to compute it. A book I did read for the Trans Rights Readathon that happened during March was Carrie Kills a Man by Carrie Marshall, which is a wonderful transgender story of Carrie's. She is a middle-aged woman who lives in the west of Scotland, now lives in Glasgow. So it was quite nice to read a kind of local trans story, and it followed her journey from being a suburban dad with 2 kids to not realising I suppose, because she knew for a long time about her identity. Well, to an extent, I think right up until recently she had been working on her own identity, whether as a trans woman or not, and I think a lot of the struggle around that. It was a wonderful story that really tackled a lot of the myths that I think people have about trans women or just trans people in general, about self-ID, about the gender recognition certificates, about access to healthcare, access to therapy. Honestly, it's utterly shocking, and some of the stuff in here is so shocking when you realise that for trans people there's often only 2 options: healthcare support or taking their own life. And it's utterly abhorrent, the world that we live in just now, where they're the most minoritised group to the point where everything about their existence, identity and body is controlled by government or access or lack of access to it. It was brilliant. And actually Carrie writes in such a accessible way, and it's often quite humanist too. So heartfelt, and really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. The book I mentioned in last week's reading vlog, wherever that, I think it was here, was Ultra Processed People, the science behind food that is not food, or something like that. Non-fiction. I listened to it on Audible, which is it's a kind of book that is really good on audio. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It's basically about the ultra processed food industry. So it's not a diet book, it's not a book telling you how to eat, it's not any of these books, not a weight loss books, none of those things. It's kind of like, if you've ever read The Empire of Pain, which is the book about OxyContin and the Sackler family, it's kind of about this big ultra processed food industry and how much it has influence on our, both in the UK and US, generally on our food guidelines, health guidelines. They lobby legislation, and how much basically a lot of this food is created to make us want more food. It's, you know, it's cheap, therefore affects those who, well, most people that are affected by the cost of living crisis, low income, people that don't have access to, you know, farmers markets and all that, or can afford to do that on a regular basis. But fundamentally it's about how the impact of that industry on our health. And so it's not about, you know, obviously we kind of know when you're supposed to, you know, what food is more nutritional for you than others, like Pringles, not. My baked potato, yeah. But these are made intentionally to make us crave more of it, and also creates the health crisis we currently have. And so it's not really a lot of people's fault. Anyway, that's a really bad synopsis, but it was so well written. There was a lot of science stuff that at times kind of went, so that would maybe make it like a 4 out of 5 than 5. But I shouldn't find, but I did find, oh, I'm not yawning because the book was boring. Just had a very tired, I'm just always tired. So this was a book that just blows your mind about the power and influence that such big industries like the ultra processed food industry, you know, like dairy industry, pharma industry, all the big ones have on access, legislation, government, all of that. It's mind-blowing from that point of view, so I highly recommend it if you like kind of those non-fiction books. Then I read 3 thrillers. 2 were and 1 was phenomenal. So I'll start with the 2 were which was Anna O by Matthew Blake. This got so hyped, and I've since discovered after posting a ranty review about it on TikTok that the hype was basically the PR machine from the publishing company. It wasn't actually authentic like reader reviews, The premise was great. So Anna O, or Anna Ogilvy, as she is called in the book, is accused of double murder, but she's currently in a coma, and she was accused of murder while she was sleepwalking. Dr. Prince is a specialist in like sleep disorders, so he's kind of brought in to try and like understand her case, and he's hit for trying to awaken her to help solve the case. But unearthing the truth puts them both at risk. Okay, so the premise sounds really, really good. The execution, terrible in my opinion. I mean, they wrote a book. I can't write a book, so, you know, kudos. But I was underwhelmed. I was bored. I thought it was all meh. It was long-winded. I kind of saw the ending coming. And I was really going like, why is this hyped? So, personal opinion, I wouldn't recommend it. But my opinions are not the be-all and end-all at all, and everybody else has a different opinion, so, you know, check it out if you do so wish. The next one from that I got utterly disappointed with was a Darcy Coates, and it was Voices in the Snow. Now, look at the cover. You would assume that it was a terrifying snow setting of a horror. Well, maybe the first 20% was. So, the premise, it's a young woman, snowstorm, big mega snowstorm. She's going to like pick up her aunt or something. They're going to head to a bunker or something. Anyway, there's some sort of kind of global catastrophe, weather situation. She ends up in a car crash, wakes up in this kind of weird house with a man looking after her, which all seems a bit weird. And it is. It's creepy at the start. This is sold as horror. I would say the 20% of it maybe is at the start, and you're kind of gripped, and then bang, suddenly we turn into a really tween, cheesy, unbelievable romance between said not kidnapper, because didn't really kidnap her, so they're really, I don't know, there's weird things happening in this house, kind of creature featurey. It's so badly executed. Like, I was like, what the heck am I reading? I was listening to it in audio, and I would say the last 30% I listened on 3 times speed, because I was like so far in. I'd got it as like a free book on Liberal FM, so I kind of felt duty bound to finish it, but it got 2 stars because again they wrote a book, more than I can do. And but Darcy Coates did write The Dead of Winter, which I really enjoyed, so there's a little bit of me like not giving up on this author. I just felt it was missold and poorly executed. But then I read a Lucinda Berry, another one of her own. I think it's an audiobook only production. I could be wrong, but as audiobooks go, this production was phenomenal. It had sound effects, it had multiple narrators. So production and execution wise, amazing. You want to know the synopsis? This is a book a must read for fans of We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. But there's a lawyer, she's a single mum, and she's volunteering at a suicide hotline, and she picks up a call from a young girl who says they've been essayed, so they've had an assault taking place, and she is about to take her own life or that of those who undertook said assault. The hotline, the main character, and unadvisedly gives her mobile number and like says like, call me back if you're in crisis, because the girl hangs up. And so their lives, so this red flags alert, stuff ensues. Because it's a small town, it relates to the school that her son went to. Anyway, that's all you need to know going in. But wow, this grabs you from the very beginning, and it was tense the whole way through. I was just like, oh, Lucinda Berry has such a way of doing this. It was on a par with her book Saving Noah, which I adored. This one, I just was like, although you have an inkling of where the plot is going, you're kind of like, nah. No, but if it is, what's going to happen then? What's going to... like the whole time, so it's kind of okay because it's kind of leading you towards that, and then brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I would say that's a 4.5 star. Utterly adored it. It was so good, and it made up for the other less than enjoyable rated books that I read. So that there was my March wrap up. 14 books, not bad going. A mix of middle grade, horror, non-fiction, books about trans people, literary thriller, mystery crime, quite a genre. Oh, but I did have one DNF. Now, as you know, and if you don't, I normally read one Stephen King book a month. This one was one I'm not, so sometimes it's ones I haven't read and other times it's rereads. I read The Dead Zone. The premise is great. You know, a guy's been in a coma for, was it 4 years? A number of years. He wakes up. So there's been an accident, and then he wakes up, but he finds when he gets, like, kind of touches people, or, you know, he can see kind of really, really into their near future. And so it's kind of, that's the kind of, maybe the supernatural element. So the premise, loved. The execution, I gave up on this about 80% in, because I was like, I'm done now. Kind of don't care how this ends. Now, I love Stephen King, but I don't love all his books. And this was one of them. So that was my one DNF of the month. There was probably 2 more I should have DNF, but I finished them. Anyway, have you read any of these books? Do any of the ones I've told you about sound like books that you might want to add to your TBR? And how was your reading month in March? How many did you read? Listen. If you read one book or half a book, you're a reader. So let me know in the comments below. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos, and check out any of my other ones that are hanging about on my channel. Thanks. Love you, pals. Bye.